Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking you straight to the heart of modern psychological tension, and maybe surprisingly, we're starting this pretty massive investigation in a place you definitely know well, the humble, maybe terrifying junk drawer.
Uh-huh. And what a starting point, really. We've been immersed in this fascinating source, a collection of notes, a transcript that deals with some intensely personal systems, specifically the battle waged daily when one person requires what the source is calling neuro-organized clarity, and their partner, well, embraces the philosophy of the king of chaos.
Right, it sounds kind of funny, but this material is actually a serious shortcut. It lets us understand these profound intersections between, domestic conflict, individual psychological needs, and even like radical authenticity in how people create content now.
Yeah, it's like a custom-built Venn diagram exploring chaos, clarity, and that drive to create something truly unfiltered.
So our mission today, it's pretty ambitious. We want to fully unpack how something as seemingly mundane as, like, where an elastic band ends up can reveal these deep truths about psychological boundaries, relationship acceptance, and how we even define our creative selves.
We are really going from a rogue twist tie in the kitchen drawer to a philosophical breakthrough on self-expression online. It's quite the journey.
The central tension here, though, it feels universal. Even if the vocabulary is specific to this source, the material maps out that psychological fault line where carefully constructed internal order meets those external forces of entropy, It's the constant negotiation we all face, really, between keeping things functionally organized and fighting back against that creeping madness of what the source calls mess blindness. We're going to dig into the consequences of this battle across, well, all aspects of life described here.
That's exactly right. And I think we need to go slow, define these terms clearly as we go, and really understand the weight they carry in this context. So let's start where the journey began for the author of this source material, the junk drawer.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Starting with that universal truth. Why do we even allow them to exist? I mean, if we live in a society that's kind of obsessed with minimalism, decluttering, sparking joy, all that, why does every single home inevitably maintain this one little sanctuary of untamed utilitarian randomness? It seems to just defy all the modern organizational rules.
Well, because the junk drawer fills this fundamental psychological need that, frankly, minimalism often ignores, the need to manage cognitive load. The core concept here, and it's beautifully put in the source, defines the junk drawer not as just clutter, but as necessary mental overflow.
Mental overflow. Okay, I love that framing. It suggests the drawer is actually utility. It's not a failure of organization.
Precisely. I mean, think about it. If we applied the principle of perfect organization to every single object, if we demanded immediate decision-making on every stray paper clip or, every bit of an instruction manual or every twist tie, we would just freeze. Productivity would grind to a halt.
Yeah, you'd spend all day organizing tiny things.
Exactly. So the junk drawer is the physical manifestation of avoiding decision fatigue. It is the designated space where chaos is allowed to exist without judgment.
So by allowing this, contained, localized area for disorder, we're kind of giving ourselves permission to delay these small, low-stakes decisions, and that frees up mental bandwidth for the bigger stuff elsewhere.
Exactly. It's a shrine to unfinished thoughts and future usefulness. We are constantly hedging our bets against this unpredictable future. Like, do I need this weird-looking screw? Probably not. But if I throw it away, I risk regretting it 6 months from now, when that one small thing is needed to fix some crucial device. So the drawer acts as this temporary holding pattern, a buffer zone. It's the organizational equivalent of, pressing snooze on an incoming task. You're just deferring the mental effort needed for proper categorization.
Okay, so if the junk drawer is the physical version of this mental overflow, then the contents become really revealing, don't they? About the owner's priorities, maybe their anxieties. What did the source materials inventory tell us?
Oh, it was peak utility anxiety, for sure. The location itself, under the coffee station, that's key. It signals a high-traffic, high-utility area, immediately tying the contents to daily rituals. These items aren't decorative. They have a function that when you need it immediately.
Right, okay. So we had the standard stuff, scissors, tape measure, mini screwdrivers. Then there was the, organized utility part. Boxes of Ziploc plastic storage bags in 3 or 4 sizes. That shows the organizational mind trying desperately to impose some structure, even when facing inevitable disorder.
Yeah, the Ziploc bags are just a beautiful example of what the source calls elite organization of disorganization. It's like categorization for the stuff you can't really categorize.
Right.
The moment the organizational system kind of collapses, it defaults to containerization. Okay, fine. I cannot put these items in their logical homes, so I'll just house them inside smaller, portable homes. And this is highlighted perfectly by the elastic bands.
Yes. The observation that there were so many elastic bands that they required a Ziploc bag just to store them all in. That's that organizational impulse turning inward, trying to contain the small, creeping chaos.
But then you get the true chaos infiltrators, the useless and endless twist ties. Twist ties, I mean, they multiply like rabbits, right? And nobody can explain why we actually need 30 of them.
No idea.
They exist purely as a placeholder for some perceived future need we can't quite define. And of course, the emotional centerpiece. The mystery piece.
The Allen key. Yeah, the source writer found it and scratched their head. It sort of symbolizes functional nostalgia, doesn't it?
Exactly. Functional nostalgia. The Allen key is like an insurance policy against regret. It's the missing piece to something you assembled. Maybe you disassembled it. Maybe you gave it away 5 years ago, but you couldn't quite let go of it emotionally. It's a fragment of a past system. The key, along with all the other stuff, really confirms the drawer's dual nature. It's half quick access utility, half graveyard for necessary but, unplaced objects that trigger anxiety if you actually delete them.
And we see this exact same thing happening in the digital world too, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the perfect analogy earlier. The AI equivalent of this very human need to retain uncertain information.
Oh, absolutely. It's the untagged, poorly named digital folder. The source calls it MESKA Final V2. We all recognize that title, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Guilty. The version you swore was the last one, but you kept iterating, and now you've got 7 versions, and you can't delete any of them for fear of losing that one crucial sentence.
It's the ultimate procrastination tool, digitally.
Digital hoarding, it's just as psychologically taxing in its own way as physical hoarding. Why do we keep all 12 drafts of a presentation? Because the perceived cost of maybe needing to retrieve it later outweighs the cognitive effort of just deleting it now. So the digital junk drawer holds those files that you might need someday. Or maybe they contain one sentence you just cannot bear the thought of rewriting.
It really proves that fundamental human need to retain information in this, uncertain holding pattern. Organized chaos, as the source puts it, is truly a love language because we're constantly managing risk and anxiety through just holding on to things. Okay, that sets up a really critical distinction, though. We've established that some chaos is necessary. It's functional chaos. But what happens when the chaos isn't contained? When it spills out of the Ziploc bags and starts disrupting the high-utility items?
Then the system is breached. The conflict moves from being a manageable internal struggle to an external domestic battle. It's the difference between the essential expected chaos and the unsolicited rogue objects that violate the established boundaries.
And that brings us directly into the relational core of the source material, the central conflict.
Right. So the relationship conflict explored here isn't just a general philosophical disagreement about, neatness versus messiness. It's described as a high-stakes struggle to maintain order in specific critical zones when one person operates with this neuro-organized clarity and the other, dubbed the king of chaos, operates with mess blindness. We really need to define these terms for our listeners because they're crucial to understanding the dynamic.
Absolutely. Neuro-organized clarity describes a mind, often maybe neurodivergent, where external order isn't just a preference, it's actually a functional requirement for internal processing. So if the physical environment is chaotic, the internal system becomes chaotic too. Disorganization causes sensory and cognitive overload, leading to stress, inability to focus, sometimes outright shutdown. For the host and the source, the junk drawer is a necessary system, not just a pile of random objects. Okay, and the counterpoint is mess blindness. And the source is clear, this isn't laziness or malice, right? It's described as an attentional failure. The items are literally in full view, but the brain filters them out as sort of irrelevant background noise, failing to register them as clutter that needs any action.
Yeah, the source material is really clear on this. The partner, the king of chaos, is simply tossing blocks in with his eyes closed. They are the chaotic neutrals who infiltrate the system. They don't intend harm, but their actions have these devastating systemic consequences for the person who requires clarity.
So the friction isn't caused by, say, the coffee filters being in the drawer. It's caused by the rogue twist tie that sneaks into the coffee and cutlery adjacent sanctuary and maybe tangles itself around the tape measure, rendering the whole system temporarily useless when you need it most.
And this small act of infiltration triggers a massive emotional and psychological reaction in the host. The source describes this need to scream when opening the drawer, followed by the desire to just ban the area from my responsibility. This really illustrates the extreme cognitive weight of the disorder. If I can't control the environment, the only viable defense feels like removing my psychological investment.
But because the drawer houses necessary items, coffee stuff, Ziplocs the host, can't simply opt out. They're forced to interact with the space that has been corrupted, sort of against their organizational principles, making every single interaction stressful.
This is exactly why the drawer becomes a battleground, a psychological fault line. And the description of the partner as a raccoon with royal status, I mean, that perfectly captures the duality. They are loved, that's the royal status, but their actions are fundamentally destructive to order. Like a raccoon, tucking shiny random things away.
Now, I want to push back just a little bit here on the idea that neuro-organized clarity is always functionally superior. The king of chaos, operating with this mess blindness, you could argue he has a lower cognitive load because he simply ignores all those micro decisions related to organizing the drawer. Isn't there a possibility that the king of chaos is, in a way, actually more efficient at managing his personal energy by just avoiding organizational processing entirely?
That's a really sharp observation, actually, and it brings a crucial layer to this. The king of chaos is efficient at avoidance. You're right. They effectively delegate the cognitive load of microorganization entirely to their environment, or, well, more specifically to their partner. Their system is ignore and move on, which is incredibly energy-saving for them. However, it only works because the host compensates by carrying that excess load, which leads to the extreme stress reactions we hear about in the source. So while the chaos system might be efficient for the individual, it's potentially detrimental to the relational system unless it's managed very carefully.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's why the host put so much thought into creating these theoretical management strategies, ways to try and accommodate the inherent chaos without breaking the essential functionality of the space.
Yeah, the strategic solutions they proposed really show the depth of the organizational effort involved. They basically acknowledge the impossibility of changing the partner, and instead focus on managing the environment, or maybe more realistically, managing the expectation.
Okay, so first up was the territorial junk law. Like a drawer within a drawer, my side, his side. Seems logical.
Simple, yeah, but fatally flawed, as the source points out, because it relies on the king of chaos actually acknowledging the territory, which their mess blindness prevents them from doing. They just see one drawer, not two segregated domains.
Right, okay. Flaw number one.
Then we have the more strategic solution, naming the space, calling it the compromise compartment.
That's brilliant, actually. You're organizing the expectation itself, not the drawer.
Exactly. By naming it compromised, you shift the burden. You're no longer surprised or personally affronted when chaos emerges. It's just fulfilling its designated labeled function. You're managing your reaction, not the disorder itself, which is maybe all you can do.
And finally, the ultimate act of, organizational espionage, the decoy drawer.
This is the Hail Mary pass, right? Installing a completely separate drawer, making it look important, that acts as a chaos sponge for all the mystery items, leaving the real essentials hopefully untouched.
Like a honeypot for random stuff.
Precisely. It's an admission that you cannot stop the flow of random objects, so you have to try and redirect it. But as the host pointed out, the partner probably wouldn't even notice the difference between the real drawer and the decoy, which just underscores the severity of the blindness. The chaos isn't targeted, it's just diffuse.
This kind of systematic disorder leads us perfectly into the specific long-running example that really defines the conflict in the source. Dryer sheet blindness.
Ah, yes. This isn't just about a small piece of laundry. It's presented as the microcosm of a 17-year war against clutter. The host describes picking up hundreds of the damn things from anywhere, everywhere in full view. This tiny item becomes the ultimate symbol because it perfectly illustrates the partner's absolute inability to register the clutter even when it's right there in full view.
The frustration culminates in dryer sheet number 14,612 being left deliberately on the hallway floor as a final stand. Like the host refused to pick it up, challenging the king of chaos to finally register the item. It was basically a test of the system.
And this refusal to engage with the chaos, well, it has dramatic, unintended consequences. The battle escalated from a contained drawer to a full-blown domestic drama involving a critical piece of household infrastructure, the robot vacuum. The system tried to defend itself, you could say, and the cost was almost catastrophic.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the legend of Rosie the Redeemer. Okay, this narrative segment from the source material is just. It's pure, unadulterated domestic tragedy, followed by subsequent triumph. We really need to slow down and savor the drama here. The buildup is critical. The host returns home to find the hallway floor clean. The dryer sheet is gone.
Oh, the rush of vindication must have been absolutely intoxicating. 17 years of warfare, and maybe, just maybe, the King of Chaos had finally internalized the lesson. But triumph, as we know, is often fleeting in a world ruled by entropy.
Indeed. The next day, the host notices an absence. Rosie, the robot vacuum, the Proenic MA Pro, is missing from her charging dock. The immediate sinking realization, Rosie is dead in my dressing room, murdered.
The robot vacuum, a machine whose entire function is to maintain order, had been taken out in what feels like a domestic ambush. The host, already in bed, realizes the severity and uses the Alexa bedroom clock to summon the partner. The partner arrives, looking panicked. Now, this is the moment the chaos finally hits home for him. He registers this disorder because it involves a machine that affects his daily life, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. The failed CPR attempt is just heartbreaking, bringing Rosie's lifeless body to her sweet home charging dock, trying chest compressions, but there are no lights. The situation looks desperate. Rosie, the great defender of order, seems to have actually failed.
But Rosie refuses to go quietly into that good night. From the depths of her mechanical soul, we get this cry of defiance. Wheel stuck. It's the final clue that saves the day. The partner flips her over and the realization hits.
The tension is palpable reading it. The host first assumes it might be something else, like a remnant of Zazu the parrot, a wood block, a walnut shell, anything but the real villain.
But the dramatic reveal provides the ultimate, irrefutable vindication. The partner spins and fishes and suddenly says, "I got it." And the culprit yanked out is that fucking dryer sheet. The single, rogue, unseen item had culminated in the destruction of the very machine designed to fight it.
Oh my God. I could just feel the shaking described in the source material, not from laughter, but from that sheer, overwhelming wave of "I told you so" vindication. The warnings weren't hysterics. They were literal, functional truths about maintaining the domestic ecosystem. Rosie went down in the line of duty, a true warrior against entropy.
And the partner, by removing the sheet, wasn't just saving the robot. He was, as the source puts it, finally cleaned up the crime scene. This entire incident just perfectly encapsulates the real cost of mess blindness. A small, overlooked item, when ignored repeatedly, causes this massive, potentially expensive disruption to a carefully maintained functional system. The battle over the junk drawer literally spilled out into the hallway and claimed a robotic victim.
But the story does have a happy ending. Rosie survived.
She did. The moment the sheet came out, she announced her own resurrection. Ba-ding, ba-ding. Her little heart started racing, apparently, and she beelined it straight back to her charging dock. She earned the night off to rest and recharge. It's a beautiful moment of, mechanical resilience, an automated system recovering from a breach caused entirely by human negligence.
And the symbolic weight of this whole incident is really solidified in the image description mentioned in the source. Rosie the Redeemer.
It's magnificent, isn't it? A photorealistic portrait of the Proenic M8 Pro emerging victorious from a battlefield of dryer sheets. She wears a golden queen's crown, not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. Rosie represents the triumph of established automated structure over the relentless petty tide of domestic chaos. She is the physical manifestation of the need for boundaries.
This incredible domestic drama, though, it serves as a vital bridge in the source material. It pivots pretty sharply here, moving from these physical battles with chaos in the home to more philosophical battles with self-doubt in the realm of creative output. How does a dryer sheet even relate to a microphone?
Well, the connection lies in the underlying principle. The courage to stand firm on your boundaries and build systems that protect your core self, whether that boundary is against a rogue twist tie or against, say, performance anxiety. The fight for order in the home translates directly to the fight for authenticity in creation. Both require architecture and self-determination.
Ah, okay. So the realization must be something like, if I can master the chaos of my home and find a system that works for me and my specific neuro-organized needs, then I can certainly create a system that works for me in the public sphere, regardless of what external expectations might be.
Exactly. It's about applying that same principle of self-advocacy.
So this next section analyzes a really unique and frankly radical approach to content creation that's described in the source. Mastering the podcast genre while specifically choosing not to show one's face or use one's traditional voice. This feels like radical self-determination, but leveraged through anonymity.
It really is the ultimate expression of what the source calls the unfiltered philosophy. And we have to analyze the paradox here, right? How does abstraction, using an avatar, using a voice modifier, actually lead to greater authenticity?
Well, the argument is because it sidesteps the most significant barrier to actually creating anything, that self-conscious self-monitoring. It allows for real conversations without the self-conscious self holding you back from ever doing episode 1.
The psychological freedom there is immense. When you remove the visual and the traditional vocal component, you effectively bypass that inner critic that worries constantly about presentation, appearance, or the judgment of your literal voice. It ensures the content, the ideas, remain the absolute focal point. The creator is heard through the depth of the message and maybe seen through the clarity of the ideas, not through the performance of their physical self.
So this means they're defining what truly matters.
Yeah.
The content, the story, the essence, what the source calls the raw, uncut truth of the conversation. It's a powerful redefinition of what it means to be a creator in this digital age, stripping away the requirement of, influencer-level self-presentation.
Yeah, and the source material addresses that desire to be messy, unpolished, and authentic in a traditional performance sense. But the realization is quite nuanced. The host notes that if they showed up in PJs, unbathed, unbrushed, the audience's focus would immediately shift to judging the visual presentation, which would actually detract from the core message.
It's the visual baggage, right? If the goal is authentic vulnerability, the physical self can often become a huge distraction that triggers judgmental filtering in the audience, pulling them away from what's being said.
Precisely. So by adopting the abstract method, the animated and beautiful with my sidekick bestie persona, they create this kind of protective armor. This persona acts as a shield that allows the conversation itself to be vulnerable and raw, while the external presentation is stylized and controlled, minimizing that superficial distraction. They achieve vulnerability by controlling the facade, ironically.
Okay, this sets up a profound contrast with the standard creator approach, which, let's be honest, is often criticized for performative relatability, trying too hard.
Exactly. Most creators try to appear relatable by showing up polished but pretending to be messy, which often results in something that feels, fake. They're performing a perfected version of themselves. The source's approach is the opposite. They admit to creating a controlled, stylized presence, but they use it as a vehicle to deliver content that is genuinely raw and unfiltered.
So they aren't trying to be relatable by mirroring the audience. They are relatable because they've genuinely embraced their unique self and their own rules for creation. They are being, as the source says, unapologetically you.
And this creates a new blueprint. It's highly empowering, I think, for creators who feel paralyzed by the pressure to be a polished influencer. It proves that vulnerability and impact don't necessarily require showing your face. They require showing your mind. By leveraging anonymity to deliver honesty, they are, in effect, writing the blueprint for real connection.
They realize they are the architect of their own creative world. They're setting the rules, designing the stage, and inviting the audience into their unique reality, rather than trying to fit themselves into someone else's pre-existing template.
And that power, the power of defining your own space, connects directly back to the domestic world, doesn't it? Back to the junk drawer in a way.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this whole journey. What does the fight over the rogue twist tie and the decision to create essentially invisibly ultimately teach us about life, according to this source?
I think it teaches us that both are necessary acts of self-determination, united by this theme of architecting reality. The host, requiring that neuro-organized clarity, must build systems, whether they're organizational systems in the home or creative systems online, that reflect their truest, most functional self, rather than trying to, shoehorn themselves into someone else's mold.
So whether it's organizing the junk drawer on your own terms or creating a podcast that defies visual constraints, the driving force is really self-priority. It's about creating for me.
And that prioritization is what allows the work, the output, to feel organic and genuine. The ultimate proof of this authenticity, I think, is that accidental output mentioned right near the end of the source. The realization that they had just accidentally made episode 09 without even realizing it. The genuine, unfiltered discussion became the content. It wasn't a performance derived from some rigid script.
That moment really validates the entire philosophy, doesn't it? When the conversation flows naturally from an authentic place, the output becomes content almost without effort. It's the purest form of self-expression.
Yeah, and the source suggests the working title for this whole philosophy should be The Power of Creating for Me, and that really reflects the central theme of self-determination. But the ultimate expression of acceptance, and maybe the most complex layer of the source material, comes when we loop back to the domestic chaos, specifically through that song written for the King of Chaos.
Right, The Way We Are. The song, which was apparently remastered and remade, is presented as the ultimate acceptance of their unique dynamics. It's the glue that holds the chaos and the clarity together in the relationship.
The lyrics are profoundly revealing about what true relational compromise looks like. It's not about resolution through change, it seems, but resolution through acceptance. Just look at the lines. You share everything you've bought last night. We made a love right after we fought, but that's okay. Conflict is actually integrated into the rhythm of the relationship. It's accepted as part of their operating system.
And then we get to that specific micro-level compromise that really defines their cohabitation. You do the dishes. It's something I hate, but you just prefer I use a paper plate, but that's okay. This love was just our fate.
This tiny, specific example is maybe the most insightful part of the whole relational dynamic described. The division of labor is acknowledged. The partner does the task the host hates, which is dishes, but the partner has a specific, maybe somewhat chaotic preference, using paper plates, to ease their own burden, even if it potentially conflicts with broader societal values like sustainability.
Right.
And the host accepts this fundamental difference and the resulting compromise because it maintains the domestic peace and the overall flow of the relationship's unique operating system.
It really highlights that radical acceptance sometimes means tolerating things that might conflict with your own non-negotiable values, like maybe sustainability or perfect organization, for the sake of the person you love and the overall functionality of the shared space you've built together.
Exactly. It's not about changing the other person or achieving absolute perfection. It's about acknowledging and accepting the difference. The neuro-organized clarity accepts the king of chaos, paper plates and all, because the core connection is ultimately worth more than the small, superficial conflict. The strong glue holding it all together isn't control, but this radical acceptance and deep authenticity, both in their domestic life and in their public sharing.
So the final takeaway from this entire deep dive seems to be the power of owning your space, whatever that space may be, physical, relational, creative. It's the importance of staying real, staying unapologetic, and building a world that accommodates your genuine needs.
Absolutely. Whether you are battling a rogue dryer sheet or deciding how to present your creative self to the world, the fundamental lesson seems to be design your reality to prioritize you. #outro.
Wow. This has been an incredibly layered deep dive. We moved from the functional chaos of the junk drawer, your personal mental overflow as you called it, to understanding the very real cost of mess blindness, culminating in that thrilling victory of Rosie the Redeemer against entropy. And finally, we explored this really empowering philosophy of creating for me, demonstrating how architecture and boundaries are essential for both, well, domestic peace and creative freedom.
And the overarching theme throughout all of the source material, it really feels like the power inherent in recognizing and naming chaos. By labeling the dysfunction, calling him the king of chaos, naming the drawer the compromise compartment, celebrating Rosa the Redeemer, you shift from simply reacting emotionally to actively managing the expectation. You externalize the problem rather than internalizing all that stress.
That's a really vital step in reclaiming control, isn't it? Naming it.
It is. So for our final provocative thought for you, the listener, we've seen how naming chaos gives you power over the expectation rather than the object itself. Think about the specific organizational conflict or source of domestic friction in your own life, that thing that keeps disrupting your equilibrium. How might you name that chaos or that conflict? Give it a royal title, perhaps, or a mechanical personality like Rosie, to reclaim control over the expectation, rather than forcing control over the object or the person. What specific boundary can you maybe enforce? Or what act of radical acceptance could you employ to achieve your own Rosie the Redeemer moment?
That's a truly challenging question, pushing us all to rethink our own organizational systems and maybe our levels of acceptance. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into twist ties, paper plates, and the blueprint for authentic self-determination. Keep prioritizing yourself, keep questioning your boundaries, and keep building the systems that allow you to thrive.
Yeah, until next time, keep digging for those true, unfiltered insights in your own lives.
We'll catch you in the next one.